Hello folks, welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania with an update from South Africa. And once again, South Africa's Minerals Minister, Gwede Mantashe, is busy spewing utter nonsense. This article that I came across from Darren Parker in Engineering News talks about a presentation by Gwede Mantashe on the 5th of August 2025. You know, folks, it seems that every cater has an excuse for Trump's tariffs on South Africa, which at 30% are the highest in sub-Saharan Africa. Gee, I wonder why they're so high. Perhaps Trump can keep his America and Mynheer Pala will keep his South Africa. That might have something to do with it. Gwede Mantashe was speaking to diamond industry stakeholders at a sector engagement session held in Kempton Park, during which he alleged that the principal reason for the tariffs being imposed on South Africa was because of the country's membership in the BRICS alliance. Funny. No mention of the artificial barriers on U.S. pork imports, quotas on imported U.S. automobiles, or the 75% poultry tariffs that South Africa slammed the United States with. Funny that. Also, Trump promised the extra 10% tariff on BRICS lovers, in no small measure because of the arrogant attitude of Cyril Ramaphosa in Brazil at the thinly attended BRICS summit, which Cyril tried to look like the big man in the absence of his masters from Beijing and Moscow. Mantashe said the danger with the U.S. imposing the 30% tariffs is that it is the kicking of a declining empire. It is going to hurt many because it's in decline. The influence of the U.S. is declining fast, and they are very agitated about that. Empire? I don't think you know the definition of empire. It's in decline? What exactly? The United States or the African National Congress's credibility? Is that what's in decline here? He continued, they're going to injure many of us, including us in South Africa, with the 30% tariffs. I'm sure that is going to accelerate the decline of its influence in South Africa, and you're not going to escape it. You will not be discussing it. You're not going to escape it. Well, Lesotho got a 15% tariff. Botswana got a 15% tariff. But you got a 30% tariff. So I guess it's okay to injure American workers, run artificial trade surpluses for decades, enjoy duty-free access to our marketplace, and then insult, belittle, and undermine the United States? Please. And in decline, the United States is the first economy in the history of mankind to eclipse $30 trillion a year in gross domestic product output. $30 trillion a year. This from the International Monetary Fund's April 2025 World Economic Outlook. $30.34 trillion. The closest country to us is the copyright violating, trademark theft, industrial espionage, corrupt, protected market, communist China at $19.5 trillion. Mantashe went on to say they imposed 30% on us because we're members of BRICS. We can't get out of BRICS. We're a Southern Hemisphere country. We're a developing economy. We can't pretend to be something we're not. Oh, but you do. You pretend to be a democracy. You pretend to be a capitalist society when you try to impose communist ideals. Nope, not even close, Jabba. Try dealing with facts. Mantashe continued. Now there's a shift of power and the Eastern Bloc is getting stronger. It's a reconfiguration that is much different from the Cold War. It's an economic-driven shift of power, and if we read that situation wrongly, we're going to be hurt more. But if we read it correctly, we're likely to benefit from it. Eastern Bloc, can you run that by me? Tell me about the Mutual Defense Treaty and or the Economic Treaty, which gives you access and freedom of movement, no tariffs, for this fictional Eastern Bloc to which you refer there, Gwede Mantashe. Now, Parker writes that Mantashe said there was a straightforward solution to the problem of U.S. tariff hikes, which was to diversify South Africa's export markets and reduce its reliance on any single one. Now, that's interesting. It shows you just how uninformed the Minister of Minerals is about his own economy. Exports to the United States make up only 6% of South Africa's total exports. Seems to me that things are already pretty much diversified away from the U.S., except that they're not. Unlike China, which buys almost exclusively raw materials, the U.S. buys value-added exports like cars built and manufactured in South Africa. The entire beneficiation of the value chain resides in South Africa, whereas coal shipped to China is a consumable, and it's a commodity whose price fluctuates. Mantashe says, our approach is different from China and everybody's because we say, let's continue engaging the U.S. because we need that market. That's our approach. We need that market. But let's talk to them. But let's not get imprisoned by that discussion. Let's deal with it as we look into various alternatives. That's just a bunch of gobbledygook. Yes, you do need the U.S. market, as do most countries, especially China, without which China would collapse. So when exactly does the African National Congress begin to engage? You talk about continuing to engage. That implies you're already engaging, but you're not engaging the U.S. That's utter nonsense. This is the problem. You haven't been engaging the U.S. at all. At all. And as far as this Eastern Bloc that you're talking about, Mantashe seems to believe that the Cold War was simply a security concern when it wasn't. It wasn't at all. It was economic. And that's how the whole Cold War ended, because the communist socialist model couldn't sustain itself. When you steal from people, when you impinge upon their ingenuity and their creativity, and you take away from them, eventually it all collapses. There's only so many 5-year plans that don't work before it all implodes. Whereas a free market with freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of association leads to innovation and improvements and growth and creation of markets that one could only dream of. Imagine the digital economy didn't exist 40 years ago. Today, it's massive. And it created tens and tens and tens of millions of jobs, almost out of thin air. Mantashe, as usual, doesn't get it. Of course, his famous line a few months ago was with the U.S., if they won't give us the aid, we won't give them the minerals. Well, I had to give him an economic lesson then. You don't give us the minerals, we buy them. If you don't want to sell them to us, we'll just buy them from a third party and go ahead and cut your nose off to spite your face. That's a real smart plan. So another economic lesson for him. The Cold War was not merely a security concern. It was economics that led to the end of the Cold War, because the socialists couldn't keep it together. All right, folks. Wow, Gwede Mantashe spewing nonsense, claiming that they're being punished because they're part of BRICS. BRICS doesn't exist. It's a pure fictional fantasy. There's no treaty. There's no mutual defense agreement. There's no economic agreement. There's no free movement of people through these countries. China still imposes 30 and 40% tariffs on South African agricultural imports, even higher than what the U.S. has just raised it to. You used to have duty-free access, and you insult and belittle and attack us and mislead and gaslight the South African public with lies about why you're facing these tariffs. You're facing the tariffs because you have an unfair trade relationship, and we finally have a president who's tired of letting America be taken for suckers. Get rid of your artificial trade barriers, stop the quotas on U.S. automobile imports, and then the tariffs can disappear. Ask yourself why, when Lesotho and Botswana did nothing to negotiate their tariffs down from 30 and 40 and 50%, they wound up with 15%. Maybe they're not arrogant, disrespectful, inconsiderate, pathological liars. Just saying. What say you, folks? Cheers.